Between the years of 2017 and 2020, I was gripped with fear. I began to realize that I was a contactee. So when I did the hypnotherapy, it provided me with clarity of what happened that night.
Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality. If you're new here, my name is Kat, and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. And I am joined today by Chris Vogelsang, who is a certified hypnotherapist with Path of Bliss Hypnotherapy. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Kat, for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit? I like to jump in and just ask people about their journey, their story, how they came to be working in spiritual fields. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are?
Sure, absolutely. The rumblings kind of happened. Um, they started happening for me back when I was about 13 years old. I really kind of always knew that I was a little different. I was just very spiritual at a young age. And I decided here recently, just in the past few years, to really act on it and to be my most authentic self. So, I mean, just to jump right into it, back on the cusp of my 13th birthday, I was laying in my bedroom, talking on the phone with my boyfriend who had just fallen asleep, and it was about midnight. I was facing the one window, and a light had illuminated that window. It was a yellow light, and my whole room was lit up. I could only move my eyes. I was paralyzed. And I looked down at my right arm, and even my skin was glowing, the yellow from that light. And at that moment, when I noticed that even my right forearm, everything was illuminated yellow, I could hear a man's voice speak to me. And he said, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." And then I didn't remember anything after that. The next thing I know is I'm waking up the next day, and I felt terrible. My whole body was sore. I felt like I had like the flu, or I had been hit by a truck. I was raised by my grandpa. I grew up out in the country, so we didn't have neighbors that were close by. And he asked his brother over across the field if he had seen or heard anything, and he did not. Um, my grandpa believed me, but he couldn't really relate to it. I mean, I went over 25 years without knowing what had happened to me that night. I didn't know maybe if it was an angel. I didn't know if maybe it was an ET. I had no idea. But I began to explore hypnotherapy back in 2017, 2018. And I didn't pursue it for the purpose of what had happened that night. I had used it actually to heal my skin and to heal my fear of the dark. But when I did that hypnosis, it's almost as if it had began to activate parts of my mind that
Yeah.
had not yet been activated. And I found out what happened to me that night. Between the years of 2017 and 2020, I was gripped with fear. I began to realize that I was a contactee, or that I am a contactee. And I think really the unknown is what was scaring me the most. I got to a point where I was not functioning well. I didn't feel safe sleeping until after like 6 a.m. So when I did the hypnotherapy, it provided me with clarity of what happened that night. And basically what was happening is that the mantis is who I had contact with, primary contact with in that um, particular abduction, if you will, or
Mhm.
experience. I had contact with the Greys, and I had contact with the mantis. And
Mhm.
the mantis was harvesting my emotions through my eyes,
Mhm.
and my life force. And they are a hive race, if you will, or species. And so then they share that. And, they're so interested in us, not just the mantis, but other ETs, because human beings are truly special. We have emotions and they want what we have. So when I came out of that session, I realized how important it was to really focus on self improvement ultimately, to be the best version of myself possible. And that's when I began to step into meditation and really take accountability for myself. And it led me to really closely examine my relationships in my life and ultimately raise the vibration of myself because we come in contact with certain people, birds of a feather flock together, right? Well,
Yeah.
this also applies to contact. I learned through this that I was also having contact with the reptilians, and that was not, um, those were not very good experiences for me. And, why were they interested in me? They were interested in me because I was holding on to feelings that were of low vibration. I was holding on to anger. I was holding on to fear and shame and guilt. And, when I was able to really look within and I was able to let go of those feelings. So I was able to transcend that fear. And when I did this, my life completely changed. I mean, I ended some relationships that actually weren't serving me, and it really wasn't serving them either. Um, and I began to have a different kind of contact. I still have contact with the mantis, and that relationship has evolved um, to a point where it's actually very beautiful,
Mhm.
and I'm grateful for it. But I even came into contact after that with Arcturians, which has helped to lead me on my healing journey. And the blue avian showed me the cosmic web on my bedroom wall, and I
Mhm.
could see it. It was absolutely beautiful. Um, they were whispering in my right ear. They were communicating with me, but it sounded more of like a high pitch whisper that was very fast. Ultimately, what I got from that exchange was that we're all one, and this is unity consciousness that we're all a part of. And it was so beautiful. It was so amazing. I'm not afraid anymore to fall asleep. I sleep pretty well. And they're very protective. They're very loving. Um, and I've come out on the other side to where I can help others now to transcend the fear and to make decisions from love instead of fear, and to really understand how to connect within and to raise the vibration.
Sharing stories like this, and I just wanted to take a second to like appreciate you because I do think that at least initially having experiences like that, it was like that for me. It's like that for a lot of people that because for physically focused humans, we don't fully understand everything that's going on. There's a lot that we're taught that says all of these things should be impossible and are probably bad or evil, or at the very least, you might be crazy. That's a very prevailing attitude that's out there. Is you kind of have you can interpret this as evil or probably dangerous, or you can interpret it as probably you're crazy and there's something wrong with your brain, right? And those are kind of the prevailing things that are out there widespread for people to hear. And I think it's important to share stories like that because interpreting it in that way is scary. That is, it will color how you see things and how you understand experiences that you're having. And I think it's really beautiful to share a story of transforming all of that fear and all of that preconceived notions that we have a lot as humans about what's going on in the universe and what's going on out there into a different way of understanding it so that the contact, the messages, things make more sense and things can come through clearly without that fear, is a really powerful message. And I can totally relate in many ways. Like I spent a lot of years in fear as well, and until integrating that journey is a process. It's definitely a whole growth process. I would love to touch a little bit on the hypnotherapy process. Like, I'm getting you now do hypnotherapy yourself and help guide others through that integration process. What does that look like for you on your end when you do it, and who would you feel like is a good candidate for maybe seeking out hypnotherapy as a helpful solution for themselves?
Sure. I appreciate that, Kat. So, if someone is interested in pursuing hypnotherapy for the purpose of finding out what's happening within their contact experiences, or if they even suspect that they're having this type of contact, the session would last probably about 2.5 hours. So they can ask 20 questions of, what they want to whatever it is that they want to know. Email me the questions, and then I will put them into hypnosis. And I record every session so that they can have this and refer back to it. But I will ask them the questions and allow them to give the answers from their subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we will go to the point of um, contact, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
We will go to the point where they were in the car, or maybe we will go to the point of, they saw this light in the room. Where I went, for example, was um, right after that voice told me not to worry and that everything would be okay. So they're in the room. I have the scene set up. I can see everything. And then boom, what happens? And that's where the questions start. And just let them speak. It's very organic. And if they don't know the answer to the question, then we'll just simply move on.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question because this keeps popping into my mind as something to bring up. And again, like you can speak on it from your experience or however it feels like. I know that I personally have tried to inform other consciousnesses, other entities about informed consent or conscious consent. Like, and I would like to touch on the consent issue because I do feel like yes, there is this level of which people who have these soul contracts or they knew this was what their life path was going to be, it's from the perspective of from their perspective, it is all a consensual interaction. I'm curious as to your point of view on how do I say this well? Like from my human perspective, there's a difference between consent and conscious consent or informed consent. There are circumstances under which it's not okay to gain people's consent, and one of those would be if they're not cognitive of the fact that they're consenting. Like for us in human society, that matters. Like you can't be intoxicated with consent, or you don't remember giving the consent for whatever reason. And so I've had conversations with other beings about informed consent, like conscious consent to certain things. And I'm curious to gain your perspective on that because it's not, they don't seem to quite understand what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
your consent came from a version of myself or a consciousness of myself that isn't the one you're talking to right now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember agreeing to this, or I don't remember what it is the contract is. And so I think there is for a long time for me anyway, it was like, that's nice, but I don't remember that. So please piss off and go away. What are your thoughts on that, just as far as somebody who's made contact? Why is it that we're told later that we consented to doing this, like like some creepy guy we met at a party, like, oh no, you consented. That seems creepy to me, or it comes off weird to me. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've had kind of, it sounds similar. So I had begged for those 2 or 3 years to leave me and my daughter alone because I also
Mm-hmm.
realized that they follow bloodlines. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not just a one-off. And and I was praying, I was begging, I was crying constantly. And the mantis came to me, and he when he came to me, um, it was I was back on that middle bed, that slab on a ship, and
Mm-hmm.
I had the grays down by my feet. And the mantis, he's very authoritative. And
Mm-hmm.
so he, in this particular instance, had on a white lab coat.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to tell me he was leaning back on another bed, very matter of fact. He's very much in charge. And he told me that this contact is never going to stop
Mm-hmm.
and that I need to stop asking. It was almost as if I was like bothering him, and he came to just tell me to stop. You need to just, you're wasting your time, and you're getting on your nerves, kind of the sense that I got. Um,
See, that's
that
fascinating.
was,
And the reason I'm asking is because I've had similar interactions, right? Where, and for me, like, I'm not gonna lie, I've always been a super obstinate student of the universe. So I'm always like, that's cute, but you can get out of my room. Like I'm a super obstinate student of the universe. So it's like you show up in my room with an attitude, I'm gonna dish an attitude right back. You can get out, right? And to your point, that's never actually worked. Like in
no, it doesn't.
contact, it continues to happen, right?
It's futile.
But for me, I did have to come to some kind of middle ground where it's like, okay, fine, but we're continuing along the lines of mutual respect because again, like I got an issue with people that just show up in my room telling me how my consciousness is going to be. Do you know what I mean? That's not informed consent, and that doesn't feel good. That's not a healthy interaction to be having. So I was curious whether or not you had had interactions with that or difficulty with beings of that nature, with the authoritative or the lack of like informed consent on their part, and what your take on it was.
Well, I I think it's a great question. It's something that isn't talked about enough.
It's not
Um,
talked. That's why I thought, like, let's
no,
talk about it because it's, and this
yeah,
is a safe space, right? So just whatever, because this is what I get, right? Is I often get the same thing of this is very authoritative kind of an attitude, and I'm not sure I always care for it, right? And I've had
yeah,
multiple conversations
exactly.
about consent, right? So,
Exactly. So I had that, okay, it's never going to stop. That sure didn't help my fear. That wasn't helping me cope. I'm like, I felt
right.
absolutely helpless. So then I do this hypnosis and I find out what this is about. And so that's when I started getting into meditation. And in my meditation, I do two things that are key, I believe, in the nature of this contact. So I didn't have control, like, okay, they're going to stay. But I realized that I could help to mend the relationship or change the nature of the contact. So I break my
Hmm.
karmic contracts, and with the intention that I am still going to learn these lessons, but I will learn them through love and compassion. And I also take my crown chakra and I illuminate it into all areas of my life: relationships, my spiritual work, my life purpose, abundance, my home, my family, health, all of that. And when I began to do that, I began to, that's when my fear began to fall away also. So, um, and then doing the chakra work, grounding, staying grounded, staying in the present moment also has been super helpful. I'm not perfect. I can't do it all the time. Um, but there's a lot of power in that. So, yeah, I mean that's the consent, I guess, aspect of it. However, one thing I will say is that when I began to really do this work with what I just mentioned, I haven't had any contact with the reptilians. So that went away.
Yeah, I do think that there's something about shifting our own vibration into like a reframe, like reframing the contact and the interaction in our own mind in a more positive light or a more loving light or a more healthy light that helps, almost like law of attraction. It helps bring in individual personalities that are more of that energy to work with and are a better match to that vibration. When we raise our vibration, we're actually attracting better experiences, both here and on the other side.
Exactly. Exactly. So I did another session on it
Mhm.
in 2022, in August of 2022. And I'm in the hybridization program, um, which but the mantis, this is their bread and butter, is the DNA and um, hybrid, hybrids. They can really this is their art ultimately, I guess. And the mantis showed me, and he stepped down from his authoritative position and he showed me an entire wall of they're almost like cocoons of little fetuses. I mean, for as far as the eye could see, they had like an orangish tint. They were filled with fluid, and um, and it's ultimately to repopulate. Um, I think not just them, but also us. And but he did it in such a way that was like I'm trying to show you something like this. Like he even had his hands like this. Um, and he almost let me do the driving, you know? That was the one time where he really stepped away from that. And again, it was working on our relationship.
Hmm.
Um, Now it's a pretty good relationship. So
Yeah, I think definitely we have a way of looking at things that is more fearful. I think the impression that I get is that are things, energies here on Earth, and to your point that you were saying earlier, are really powerful energies because of the nature of our reality. So things like fear, anger, even lust are real powerful emotions for us, and those emotions, when they're in full tilt, really do shape our reality, how we see things, our vibration, everything that's attracting to us. And I feel like the messages or the real intent of the messages tend to come through clearer and easier when we learn to step away from those feelings and from those vibrations, so that like the meaning that's behind what's being communicated can come through in a more clear fashion, for sure.
you're so correct. I was identifying with the emotion. Like if I got
Hmm.
angry, if something happened, I would actually let like half of my day or my whole day be ruined. I
Yeah.
mean, I would it was a game changer for me. I mean, it changed my whole life. And our personality is our personal reality, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, just like what you were saying, I mean, it's energy, that emotions are it's energy in motion. That's what emotions are. So, and energy, we can use that energy to be a co-creator, to be creative, or we can be destructive, which is still creating something. So,
Yeah.
we we have to take charge. And I think, there's a lot of people that are not even really taught emotional attunement growing up. And then, we listen to, music and we watch these TV shows and movies, and it's almost like a social engineering in a way to where our reactions, well, for one, they're usually reactions instead of responses. So that but it's almost like we learn how to behave instead of really taking the time to ask ourselves, is this true? These programs that ultimately do get installed in us, is this true? If we When we really begin to ask ourselves these things, and ultimately they're not really true most of the time, we can take a step back and uninstall those programs and step into the highest expression of ourselves, which is our authentic self. And
Yeah.
that's how I came up with the name of my practice, Path of Bliss Hypnotherapy, because I was on the path of suffering for a while. And when I did this work, excuse me, I was able to step onto the path of bliss. So,
Yeah. And I think that's a really powerful message for people. And it's there's a real big awareness piece, right? Because I think we kind of naturally, and again, in an attraction-based system, we tend to be drawn to the things that we feel like are resonating with wherever we are. And so, if you're sad, you tend to listen to sad music, or if you're angry, you want to listen to angry music, or you want to watch programs and things on TV that mimic or feel connect into what you're feeling. And so if you're in those negative feelings, those low vibrational feelings, there's a tendency to escalate that energy or escalate the momentum on it by connecting to other things that feel like you can relate to it. rather than having the awareness to step away from that and realize that there's to some degree we can just shift that vibration or make a different choice to find something else to resonate with and shift that vibration. So there's a whole awareness piece there that it really is just our tendency to want to feel resonant with things, and we can actually shift that and have some control over it for sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, if I had a bad day, I would drink a beer. And,
Hmm.
and it really, that doesn't help anything. Even like plant medicine, that paralyzes the emotion and it might subside or actually numb the emotion, but it's going to come back because it hasn't been dealt with. And if we don't deal with it, then it's going to take home, it's going to reside in our bodies. And when it
Yeah,
manifests there, it's been around for too long. And, we're taught to stay away from pain. But if you really sit with the emotion and sit with the memory, and I did this in meditation and go back as far as I can to the first time that I have felt it or experienced it, and then maybe I can feel it in the body. Um, there's a lot of healing there. The more we heal, the more we can remember who we are. And, I firmly believe that we are souls and these, having this human experience and that we are absolute light, that light never goes away, but we can grow it and it has a ripple effect. And when we wake up and we remember that, when we start healing and we activate that memory, um, it's a game changer. It's a ripple effect. And it goes back to that consciousness, we are all one, just like how the blue avian was trying to tell me that morning with
hmm,
the web and all of those lights in the web.
absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to just real fast, like let people know where they can find you, let people know where they can find the practice? I think it's really brave to come forward and talk about these experiences that are, mainstream, get rejected or, uh how do I say this, diagnosed or whatever, like, oh, it's just this function of your subconscious, that type of thing, where it's very dismissive of the experience. And so I really appreciate a practice that's there to help people, but is not in that dismissive light or in that, you know, invalidating feeling that a lot of people get when they do seek help. So can you let people know where they can find you, where to find your practice?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And you're absolutely correct. Path of Bliss Hypnotherapy.com is the name of my website. My phone number is on there. My email address is on there. I recently did just start an ET contact support group for people who are having these experiences. They don't have anyone to talk to. Maybe they are being, kind of shut out or diagnosed. But it's online, it's on Zoom, it's free, and we'll be doing it once a month. So please reach out to me if you're interested in the group at pathofblisshypnotherapy.com and shoot me a text if you want, shoot me an email, and we can talk about it and get you into the support group if you like.
Absolutely. I appreciate so much the outreach and the work that you're doing. We will link all of that in the description for people who are interested in checking it out. Make sure that it's easily available. I appreciate you so much, your time and being here, your openness and sharing your story. You're willing to interact with me. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you guys so much for being here. Like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. And we will see you next time on spirituality.